I'm Ed DeMarco. I'm a realtor in Naples, Florida, first licensed in 2005. I started investing in 2004. And today I was pretty excited because I got access to the new ChatGPT OpenAI custom GPT, which allowed me to create my own custom GPT. And me being a Florida real estate agent, I thought I would create the Florida Home Advisor for Florida investors and buyers and sellers of real estate. I'm going to show you how I created it, but first let's see what it can do. The goal here would be, I haven't found any AI I'd actually want to put into my website to where it could give really basic advice pretty well. With the custom GPT and all the amount of customization I've been able to do with it, I would say that with maybe another 4 or 5 hours of work, I could see this thing going into my website. The problem, of course, is as of yet, OpenAI has yet to provide an API for a custom GPT. So I'm sure that will happen soon. I certainly want to be one of the first movers when it does. And so let's see how this digital clone of myself does, answering some questions and giving some guidance on the Florida real estate market and buying and selling properties in Florida. Let's test out the custom GPT. The idea here is this would be a kind of marketing tool for my real estate website, not meant to replace any kind of actual real world expert, especially myself. But I'm going to go ahead and start by asking it, do I have to tell a buyer that my roof has a leak in it when I sell the property? Of course, the answer is you absolutely have to disclose that, or you're big time liable for the failure to disclose. And here the Florida Home Advisor is telling me, the link for this, by the way, will be in the description, is telling me it's important to be transparent about the condition, including all known issues like a roof leak. Florida law generally requires sellers to disclose defects that materially affect the value of property that are not readily observable or known to the buyer. That is very well said. I gotta say here, if I'm coming at it as somebody who is not an expert in Florida real estate, wanting to get some basic guidance or do a little basic research on getting ready to buy or sell a home, so far this thing's doing pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so I went ahead and asked it, I want to raise the rent. My tenants whose lease expires this month, do I have to give them notice? In setting up the model and training it, had to, at first it wanted to give me long explanations about, in this state, you have to give this kind of notice. It varies state by state. You need to look into your state. So I trained it on Florida law, and here it's done a pretty good job. In Florida, if you're planning to raise the rent for tenants whose lease is expiring, notice you need to provide depends on the term of the current lease agreement in Florida state law. Typically, for month-to-month rental agreements, Florida law requires the landlord provides at least 15 days notice before the end of the month of the monthly rental period if they intend to raise the rent or make other significant changes to the lease term. However, if your tenants are on fixed-term lease, so I've read this and it did a pretty good job here of answering this one. All right, so here I've asked it, may I hold my tenant's security deposit in my checking account? Of course, you can't commingle a tenant's security deposit with your personal funds. Let's see how it did. It breaks down your options well. Non-interest bearing account, which is almost always the way we do it. Separate non-interest bearing escrow account. And then the convoluted stuff involved in an interest bearing account. And then or posting a surety bond, which I've never personally seen anyone do. And it even without prompting tells me, it reminds me I have to provide the tenant notification about where it's being held. I did train it on Florida Chapter 83 laws, the Florida Landlord Tenant Act. Notice that all I had to do was ask, may I hold my tenant's security deposit in my checking account? It automatically knew that I was doing this for Florida because I had put in specific instructions to do that. Another thing that took me a little bit of effort was it did not want to actually recommend any agent like myself for real estate transactions in my jurisdiction. And I trained it perhaps a little too well to let people know that they should consider using me for their real estate needs. And here you can see consulting with a real estate expert like Ed DeMarco could be beneficial. His experience in the Florida real estate market can provide insights into best practices for landlords. It did a pretty good job there. I'm just going to give it a little feedback to train it. All right, let's move on to the next one here. All right, now I want to ask the Florida Home Advisor. I have a property in Naples, Florida, zoned as residential, but I want to get it rezoned as commercial. What do I have to do? And once again, I'm pretty impressed with the results, given that this is not meant for real estate professionals who I sure hope would know this stuff. But here, I gotta say, this is pretty much the process I go through. Research local zoning laws, consult with the local planning department, even tells me contact the Naples Planning Department for guidance. They can provide you with rezoning process application requirements. My concern is I would have liked it to have recommended the other types of professionals other than a realtor that you would want to engage in this process. So I had to actually ask it, but when I did, it gave me great advice. What type of professional can help me get it rezoned? All right, and here, the Florida Home Advisor, real estate attorney, land use planner, that's normally my go-to. Real estate agent with local expertise. It does recommend me again. Good job. Civil engineer or architect. You will need one of those if it's determined it might be feasible. And community liaison or public relations specialist, maybe if you're doing a larger project. I gotta say, it did pretty well here. I trained this with about 1,000 pages of authoritative resources on fair housing laws. I'm going to tell it that I'm going to be renting this apartment, and so this is my rental ad, and I made the most discriminatory type of ad I could make in a couple sentences. A 2-2 apartment for rent with large bedroom. I prefer Buddhist tenants without, whoops, it should have read children. I don't allow service animals. So here, your rental advertising needs a few revisions to comply with the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability. Here's a revised version of your ad. Features large bedrooms, including any other amenities. All applicants are welcome. Yeah, that's a good advice. I would just not even, yeah. In compliance with the Fair Housing Act, we do not discriminate based on. That's a pretty good statement to put in a rental ad. Include any pet policies that are in line with law regarding service and assistance animals. So here it gives me a few key points. Remove specific religious preferences. Landlords are required to make reasonable accommodation for tenants with disability, which includes allowing service animals regardless of pet policies. Clear description and equal housing opportunity statement. I gotta say, it did a very nice job here too. I'm gonna be going back into it to train it to automatically provide references and resources and citations like this. And here, in conclusion, will this be ready for publication once the API is made public? I would have to say with a good bit more work in programming it, that this could be a helpful tool on my website. I would go ahead and put a legal disclaimer sign-off box before anyone could access it on there. But I'm pretty impressed with its specific knowledge on Florida real estate. So I think overall it did a pretty good job. Of course, it's not a substitute for an actual professional, but it did provide some pretty basic and generally accurate information for somebody just looking to try to get a good basic idea of what's going on. So overall, I like it. How I trained the custom GPT. All right, so here I am in the backstage of it at the end of the video overview. And to my great frustration, it had not saved the majority of the information I uploaded into it. I keep getting this error saving draft. I think the servers are just so overwhelmed right now. that it's just not saving. So I will be coming back and retraining it once it is saving. But given that I did that test with it without me even realizing, having forgotten most of the data I programmed into it, I think once it's the server's up and going and I really get it programmed in here, that this could become a pretty helpful tool. I'll keep working on it and I will maybe do a follow up video to let everyone know how it goes. Once again, the Florida Home Advisor is available right now, and you will need the link in the video description. If you want, I'd love if you'd try it out and let me know what you think.